You know, from the light bulb over your head to the sparks firing in your brain, pretty much everything is driven by one of the most fundamental forces in the universe, electromagnetism. But behind this force, there's this ghost. It's a property we all learn about in school, but physicists still kind of struggle to say what it is. Today, we're looking at a radical new theory that claims it's finally figured it out.
See, we are unbelievably good at describing what electric charge does. We can measure its effects with just mind-boggling precision. But if you actually corner a physicist and ask them what charge is, like what a positive or negative charge is really made of, well, the conversation gets a whole lot weirder. It's one of those huge mysteries just hiding in plain sight.
To make sense of the universe at its absolute smallest scales, we've been leaning on this metaphor we inherited from, a mechanical clockwork age, the particle. We think of electrons and protons as these tiny little distinct balls, and charge is just a property that's kind of painted onto them like they're red or blue. But what if that whole idea, that foundational metaphor, is what's holding us back?
According to a new way of thinking, this tyranny of the particle forces us to invent all these strange rules like wave-particle duality, just to explain why our little balls sometimes act like spread-out waves.
So what's the alternative?
Well, it's to ditch the particle metaphor completely and start seeing reality as this systemic, unified whole. Just a single, vast field where everything we see is just a pattern.
This new framework has a name, Single Point Theory, or SPT for short. And its core idea is, well, it's breathtakingly simple. What if everything we see, all the particles, all the forces, literally all of reality, is just the result of interference patterns? Just ripples and waves interacting within one single underlying field?
The whole philosophy behind SPT is about elegance. It demands that all the complexity we see has to come from simple rules. No need for a giant list of fundamental particles. It insists there's no magic, no spooky action at a distance. Everything has to be explained by the field's own behavior. And this leads to the most important shift of all. Particles aren't things floating in the field, they are the field, just twisted up into stable, repeating patterns.
Okay, so let's dive into that, right? If we just throw out the idea of particles as tiny little balls, we're left with a massive question. What on earth is an electron really? And how does this totally new perspective explain something as fundamental as electric charge?
So the first step here is a really big mental shift. You have to forget about a universe filled with separate objects floating in empty space. Instead, I want you to imagine reality as one single, indivisible thing, a kind of substance that's just constantly moving, constantly in process. A great way to visualize this is to just think of a huge ocean. The water itself, that's the process field. And all the action, everything that happens, comes from waves crisscrossing the ocean, adding together in some spots and canceling each other out in others. It's just this constant dance of interference.
Now here's the cool part. What happens when waves in this ocean interfere in just the right way? Well, they can form these stable, self-sustaining patterns that just hold their shape. And in SPT, that's what a particle is. It's a persistent vortex, a cosmic whirlpool in the fabric of this field. It's not a separate thing. It's just a localized, swirling pattern of the field itself.
Okay, so if a particle is a vortex, then what is its charge? This is the core idea of SPT, and it's a big one. Charge isn't some property that's stuck on the vortex. Charge is the geometry of the vortex itself. It's a measure of how the field is twisted. Physicists have a fancy term for it, the topological winding number. But that's really just a precise way of counting the twists. It's pure geometry.
Let's break that down, make it super simple. A proton, think of it as a whirlpool twisting in one direction. We can just call that a +1 winding. An electron, it's just a similar whirlpool twisting in the exact opposite direction, a -1 winding. So the positive and negative signs aren't some mysterious fluid or property, they're just labels for the direction of a geometric twist. That's it. Clockwise versus counterclockwise.
So this is where the theory really gets powerful, right? It's a nice, simple geometric idea, but can it explain actual physics? Let's put it to the test with one of the most basic observations out there, the fact that positive and negative charges cancel each other out perfectly. Why is the universe, as a whole, electrically neutral?
In the standard model, the particle model, we just sort of accept it as a rule. +1 and -1 equals 0.
It's a fundamental law, sure, but the why behind it is, well, it's basically magic. The numbers just happen to be perfectly equal and opposite. We don't really know why.
But SPT argues there's no magic and there's no coincidence. That perfect cancellation is a direct consequence of the underlying geometry.
So, when a proton vortex with its +1 twist gets together with an electron vortex with its -1 twist, their two opposing geometric distortions just superimpose on each other, and if you're looking at them from a distance, the field's clockwise twist is perfectly undone by the counterclockwise twist. The net twist on the surrounding field just becomes zero. They cancel out.
This completely reframes the whole idea. See, neutrality isn't some extra property that we have to tack onto particles. It's what's called a boundary condition on the entire system. It's just the natural result of the field settling into a stable pattern that minimizes any overall disturbance.
So a hydrogen atom isn't a proton capturing an electron like a little planet. In this view, it's simply the most stable, lowest energy way for a positive twist vortex and a negative twist vortex to arrange themselves. A neutral atom is just the natural outcome of the field settling into its most balanced, peaceful state. Now, this geometric explanation for charge is really elegant. It's pretty cool. But does the idea stop there? Or is this whole unified field approach hinting at something, even bigger? Well, this is what the theory calls its Rosetta Stone, and it shows how all of physics could kind of snap into place. In this new language, charge is about the twist in the field, what a physicist would call its phase. But mass and energy, that's about the height or intensity of the waves in the field, their amplitude. And gravity? Gravity is just the slope of those waves. It's not three different things. It's three different properties of one single field.
I mean, just think about what this means for a second. In single-point theory, there aren't separate fields for gravity and for electromagnetism. There is just one field. And mass, charge, and even the forces we feel are simply different ways our measurements perceive the geometry and the dynamics of its patterns.
And that leaves us with this final, pretty provocative thought. What if the incredible, stunning complexity we see all around us, from the smallest atom to the largest galaxies, isn't the result of a whole zoo of different particles and forces? What if instead, it's all just the emergent harmony of one single grand interference pattern unfolding through time according to one simple rule?